6 ranked on ranked matchups here, week 4 of the Phil Steele Show. Back with a vengeance with the unicorn himself, the man, the myth, the legend. He is Phil Steele. Follow him on Twitter at PhilSteele042. I'm Kyle Schassburger at Kyle Schass at Tripp Hurd. The Lock Doctor is here. May or may not be hanging out with Taylor Swift lately. They might be willing to make that one public as well. But I know Phil Steele is here to break down what is the most massive slate in college football that we might have seen in quite some time. We are prisoners of the moment for you here, Phil, as week 4 is chock full of heavy hitters. We got a lot of games to get through, so let's get right into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, game 1. We've got some appetizers, if you will, on Thursday and Friday. And we'll start with Georgia State at Coastal Carolina. This one is a Sunbelt West showdown, Phil, and I'm curious what you think about two teams that have not been able to win on each other's home field, I guess you should say. At least the home team has struggled in this series, 0-6 straight up, 0-5-1 ATS in the series. Coastal 1-5 against the spread as a home favorite last season. Georgia State games this year alone, they've been killing it. They've been putting up a lot of points, Phil. It's gone over in all 3 games, averaging 35 points per game. Step up in weight class for Coastal Carolina. They had the letdown at UCLA, but this one's for real now. It's Sun Belt Conference play.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, Kyle, I mean, the angles are clearly on Georgia State here. You've got a team that's the home team is 0-6 straight up in this series, 0-5-1 against the spread. Georgia State 9-4 is an away dog, and Coastal Carolina, when they're favored at home in Sunbelt play, how about 0-6? So everything points Georgia State that way. But the other thing I'll point out is I've been impressed very much with Georgia State. I like the way that they steamrolled Connecticut. I thought that was a very good win. And then last week against Charlotte, a couple of big plays. I think they had like a 93 and an 86-yard touchdown pass. It was a big play game, but came away from that with a 16-point win at Charlotte, which I thought was impressive once again. So I really like what I'm seeing out of Georgia State this year. They're great as an underdog. Coastal's not great as a favorite. I think they take this one to the wire and potentially even pull the upset.
All right, Phil, let's move on to Friday night. We've got Wisconsin on the road at Purdue, 7 o'clock kick in West Lafayette, FS1. Badgers, they come into this one 2-1 on the
Tripp,
season.
tell me what's going on?
Can you hear him now, Phil? You hear Tripp?
Check,
Tripp,
check 1, 2, 3.
I hear
Check.
Yeah, go ahead, Tripp. You're good.
All right, let's go on to Friday night. Wisconsin on the road at Purdue, 7 p.m. on FS1. The Badgers come into this one 2-1 on the season, but they had to come back last week. They trailed 14-7 in the third quarter to Georgia Southern before they rattled off 4 touchdowns in a row to put that one to bed. They've actually won 16 in a row in this series with Purdue here. The last time the Boilermakers won in West Lafayette was 1997. Drew Brees was the quarterback, so it's been a while. Hudson Card takes over now. His numbers have looked pretty good outside of those 3 fumbles he had last week. So going into this one, what do you like here? Do you think Wisconsin keeps it rolling in the series, or can Hudson Card keep the Boilermakers close on Friday night?
Yeah, Wisconsin's absolutely dominated the series. And granted, these are different teams now. You've got different head coach at Purdue, different head coach at Wisconsin. But I like the Badgers overall. And they, after a slow start, as you pointed out, against Georgia Southern, really came on. I like the way they can run the football with Braylon Allen and Ches Maluzzi. Tanner Mordecai is looking better by the week. And Wisconsin does have the defensive advantage here as well. They're holding opponents to 121 yards per game below their season average. So they're doing a good job there. Purdue is sort of average on the defensive side of the ball. I think Wisconsin's a better team. They've got the series history. And even though Ross-Ade can be dangerous at night, like this one will be, I'm going to go with Wisconsin and lay the 6 in this one.
All right, another Friday night game with NC State on the road at Virginia, 7:30 kick time there in Charlottesville, and this will be the return of Brennan Armstrong. He's now the quarterback for NC State. He started 30 games over the last 3 years for the Cavaliers. NC State's 2-1, but they're 0-3 against the spread. It's kind of the same old story. They've got another good defense, and it makes sense that they've gone under. Their games have been under in 2 of their first 3. I think the under was in play at 49. I checked today. It's down to 47 for the total in this game. What do you like here between the Wolfpack and the Cavaliers on Friday night?
Brennan Armstrong made some comments in the postseason. He really took last year personally because they downgraded his draft stock based on the season he had. He just didn't fit with the offense. And he is determined in this game to show that he is a better quarterback than what he put on tape last year. So I think it's going to be a very determined Brennan Armstrong. He wasn't happy with last year, the way it worked out. And I think we see his best. And with Virginia, they're a decent team. They've got a decent defense, but their defense isn't even up to last year's standards. Last year, even in that poor year, they held opponents 28 yards per game below their season average. This year, they're allowing 27 above. So I think Armstrong and company can get the revenge. I didn't have a strong one on this. I've got NC State winning by 10-14. They're laying 9.5, so it's around the number. But I would lean with NC State based on Brennan Armstrong and his determination in this one.
Phil, we got a couple late ones on Friday night we can go chasing for. First, it's Boise State, 7-point favorite, laying the touchdown, 45 the total at San Diego State, 10:30 on CBS Sports Network. The Broncos 8-0 straight up, 7-1-0 in Mountain West Road openers. Boise won 35-13 at home last season, but blew an early lead on the road the last time these two met at San Diego State back in 2021. What are your projections here for the Broncos and the Aztecs, 10:30 Friday night?
I have to give a lean to the home team here. Now, I haven't seen San Diego State play a good game all season. Ohio, Rourke goes out early in the first half, and they beat Ohio, but only by 7, get outgained in the game, got past Idaho State, got blown out by UCLA. And then last week, I liked Oregon State, and they actually gave them a decent game. Only got out first down 20-18. So maybe the light bulb came on for San Diego State last week. It's a must win. They're at home. If they're going to contend for the Mountain West title, they've got to win this game. Boise opened up with a couple of tough losses. They're 1-2 coming in. I think Boise is the better team, but I'm going to lean with the home dog in this. I take San Diego State plus the points. Potential upset once again.
Reminder, philsteele.com is where you can get more information from Phil. You can look at his weekly newsletter Inside the Press Box. You can couple that with Phil Steele Plus, a $99 value right there. Bet smarter, not harder, be more like Phil. Access to all the team pages, FBS, FCS, even NFL team pages, data that is updated every Sunday morning after all of these games. $99 value, more information at philsteele.com. And again, Phil Steele Plus, we love all the interactions from you, especially on the video side, a growing, burgeoning audience via YouTube on the Varsity Network channel. Continue to interact with us wherever you find us, whether that's on Twitter, X, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even on YouTube. One lucky listener, viewer will be clumped into the opportunity for a free Phil Steele Plus membership. Again, valued at $99. And Phil, feel free at any time, if you're comfortable, share that screen. We'll try to toy and show some of the viewers, give them an inside look of what you're seeing and giving us some of this information of what your computers say. That other Friday night game, Phil, Air Force and San Jose State, the other late one, 10:30 on Fox Sports 1. Air Force is favored by 6. I'm all in on the Falcons here, primarily because this team has not covered one time yet, and they have the number 1 rushing offense at 321 yards per game going up against the 106th worst rushing defense. San Jose State, the Spartans are allowing 170 yards per game. Last time these two met in San Jose, Spartans won with no fans in the stands, 17-6. Arkansas blew what was a 7-point favorite opportunity, lost as the fave. 4 Mountain West meetings all time. Air Force 3-1 straight up, a 1-3 ATS. They're due to cover in a big way here. I'm taking the Falcons in this spot, Phil.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to go with San Jose in this one. I have an average game grade on my on Phil Steele Plus, and the average game grade actually says San Jose State's playing at a higher level. Granted, they're 1-3, but they played a good game against Toledo. They also took on USC and Oregon State, so they've taken on really tough competition. The one game that wasn't an elite team like that, they beat Cal Poly 59-3. And when you look at Air Force, their defense has been great. They're only allowing 179 yards per game. But they haven't really taken on a good offense yet. So San Jose is a team that when I went over the team with Coach Brennan, almost all the positions, he said, this is the best we've been. This is the best we've been. And San Jose State usually matches up pretty well against Air Force. Here you can click on the screen, Kyle, you're going to see that San Jose's actually covered the last 3 games. It's tough to see. It's a little small there. Covered the last 3 games at home. But right here is where the average game grade is. It's got San Jose 100.4 and Air Force 99.3. Now, that has no starting area. What it does, it takes into account who you've played, what not only the score was, but what you did yardage-wise in the game. And so I'm going to go with San Jose State plus the points. Disagree with you on that one, Kyle.
Hey, that's okay. That's why we're here. Okay, that's why we have a show. That's why we come together for you to be able to give us the most accurate advice. I mean, we trust your will more than anything. I at least need that other opposing viewpoint in my mind to think about things a little bit differently. It's Tripp Hurd's turn, though, to speak his mind, because this will be his seminal moment coming up early Saturday. Again, a loaded slate. Somebody ranked on ranked games. This is one of those that isn't ranked on ranked. It's an unranked Clemson team, Phil and Tripp, that is looking for their first top 5 win as an unranked team since 2003 when they took down a third-ranked FSU squad.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm very excited for this one. I know Clemson, that's going to be a tough place to pick up a road win. Florida State has just, I really do think they are the more talented team in this one, but they've just been so all over the map here to start the season. I mean, the first half against LSU, they could have been down 2 touchdowns very easily going into halftime. Then they come out in the second half and look like they could beat the Miami Dolphins, but they roll against Southern Miss, and then against Boston College, they really got bailed out by all those penalties that helped them escape there with a win. And I don't know. I just feel like I would have a hard time seeing Clemson repeating that, like 18 penalties. I don't see that happening this week in Death Valley. So in a close game, which this is expected to be, I might have to lean a little bit with Clemson here.
Yeah, and you look at this game. The thing that surprises me, guys, is the line's 2.5, because the narrative I hear around the country is Florida State's a really good team. Clemson's struggling. Florida State's the best team in the ACC. They're going to win this game, and yet the line's only 2.5. So I think Vegas maybe knows something that the casual fan might not know. And when I look at Clemson, here's a team that hasn't been a home underdog since 2016. They've lost 1 home game the last 6 years. They've won the last 6 games against Florida State. And Tripp, you'll remember last year that game was 34-14 in Tallahassee in the fourth quarter. Florida State got a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter to only lose that one by 6. So Clemson is a team that you go back to the Duke game, they blew their opportunities in the red zone. I think as long as Cade Klubnik does not turn it over, like he's had some problems with this year, I like Clemson to pull the upset in this one. I think Clemson might just be the better team.
Well, let me add one more thing here. I want to see what your thoughts are on this. Florida State's defense really seems to struggle in the first halves of games. I mean, I think a first half bet on the over here, maybe even a first quarter bet. The first quarter bet's 12.5.
Wow.
On the over under. So I think those might be decent plays this week.
That might be a good play, Tripp. I like your logic there.
Dabo Swinney, 11-4 against the spread as an underdog against ranked teams. He's covered by an average of 6 points per. He's won 9 of 15 games as a pup, straight up. And you're right. A lot of people are just writing. A lot of people are just writing off last week's effort, Phil, for Florida State against Boston College. People are just forgetting about it, and they're zeroing in on Clemson and their struggles, yet that offense is playing a lot better. And you take away those red zone opportunities, the missed failures by Clemson at Duke and Florida. Think if LSU punched it in, as Tripp alluded to, against FSU, that's a much different game. So I'm leaning Clemson as well. That's going to be plenty of fun, though, on Saturday. It may not be as fun for Rutgers, who's taking the show on the road to play at second-ranked Michigan. Now, the Scarlet Knights are 3-0 for a third straight year under Greg Schiano. These are 2 tough run defenses. The Wolverines, though, second-ranked team in the land, 24-point favorites, 12 o'clock on Big Ten Network. Phil, Michigan hasn't covered, though, all season. These have been gaudy spreads. I don't know if things are going to change here. Jim Harbaugh is returning. He's coaching his 100th game on the sideline for the Wolverines.
Yeah, and Rutgers is actually 3-0 against the spread this year. So it's that's interesting. And then here's an interesting point you may not realize from this game is that in the last 3 meetings, Rutgers 3 years ago or back in 2020 only lost by 6. In 2021, the last time they played here, they only lost by 7. Now, last year was a blowout, but 2 of the last 3 meetings have been decided by 7 or less. I like Rutgers' defense. I like the way that Monanga is running the football. And Gavin Wimsett's a mobile quarterback. They're not going to let him throw a lot. I think he has to throw enough to be honest, to keep Michigan's defense honest. But go back to last week's Michigan game against Bowling Green. In the third quarter, the game's 14-6. Michigan gets 2 turnovers and 2 2-yard touchdown drives Take those away, that's a 17-6 final game. So Michigan's offense hasn't been explosive. Rutgers has a really good defense. Rutgers knows they can play with them. They're going to try to shrink the clock. I'm going to take Rutgers plus the 24 in this one to keep it closer than expected.
All right, let's move on to Auburn at Texas A&M. The Aggies are laying 7.5 in this one. Both teams, this will be the conference opener for both teams. Last season, Auburn won a pretty low scoring affair, 13-10. This year, though, I think the difference could be A&M's quarterback. Connor Wegman looks pretty good right now. What do you like on this one, Phil?
Quarterback and receivers. I remember last year they lost Anais Smith. I think it was the 4th week of the season. He was out for the year, and the receiving core is very young. This year they have a dangerous receiving core with Evan Stewart, Anais Smith. Walker's look good. Thomas's look good. Connor Wegman is a key. He only has 2 interceptions in his career, and they are at home for this one. And I'm going to go back to that Auburn-Cal game 2 weeks back. Auburn really struggled on the road. They only had 12 first downs against Cal. 230 yards offense. Had to feel fortunate to come out there with a win, and Cal is not Texas A&M. Now, last week, Peyton Thorne for Auburn ran for over 100 yards. He's never done that in his career, and he won't do that here against the Aggies. The Aggies are a solid home favorite, playing with revenge, the better team. I like the Aggies to win this one by double digits.
All right, so a little bit of a higher scoring option here on the next game. We've got SMU at TCU. The battle for the Iron Skillet. TCU is a 6.5-point favorite. The total is at 63.5, which I think is kind of interesting because if you look at the last few years, this game tends to get into the 70s and 80s pretty frequently. What was I going to say? TCU, 564 yards last week. It looks like maybe their quarterback's starting to round into form here. What do you like between the Frogs and the Mustangs?
Yeah, very impressive for TCU last week. So I agree with you there. Chandler Morris. So remember, Chandler Morris actually beat Max Duggan out for the starting job at TCU last year and then got injured in the opener. But the surprising thing here, and Kyle, you can hit the screen share. I'll just show a couple numbers here. SMU, despite the fact they lost to Oklahoma 28-11, they were an average game grade of 115.5. Let's look at that Oklahoma game a little bit closer. They actually had a 367 to 365 yard edge. And if you look at the game here in the 4th quarter, it's 14-11. They gave up 2 late touchdowns. So they played Oklahoma. It's on a roll, really tight, even though they didn't win the game against the spread. My average game grade has them at 115. It's got TCU at 102. So it's saying SMU, even if you factor in the home field edge for TCU, by double digits or by 10 points here. And TCU is laying almost a touchdown. So I think this is an underrated SMU team. I like the way they're playing this year. And I'm going to take SMU plus the points over TCU.
Love it. All right, Phil, we're learning on the fly. You hear me now, right? I've removed your screen and I've re-edited myself. Okay, we might be making some progress for those watching on YouTube on the archived video portion. We want to be able to show you the goods, all right? You want to peek behind the curtain. You want to see what Phil Steele Plus is all about. Again, $99 value. Phil's going to put some money in your pocket, all right? He is our elite handicapper. He is the unicorn, the guru, the godfather himself. Two, if you haven't had enough, Phil, don't forget, Wednesdays on College Sports Now on this audio podcast platform with Wayne Cook, Stephen Hartzell hosting. Each week, Phil Steele is on there breaking down games. So all the top 25 games, including games that we may not cover because we don't want a lot of overlap. But unfortunately, a week like this week, there's going to be some overlap. So we're looking for different angles. We're looking for different kind of juice, and Phil is going to help deliver. The juice will be present at Autzen Stadium for Colorado and Oregon. Afternoon delight will begin with the Buffs and the Ducks, who are 21-point favorites. 70.5 is the total, 3:30 on ABC. All right, Dion, you've showed us through 3 games that you can get your team up and you can take the appropriate criticism or off-color remarks away from the field, motivate your team, people who have doubted you to this point. Well, now you're walking in as 21-point underdogs at Autzen Stadium, a place where Oregon has been dominant. It's a beefier team. It's a team that can match up offensively, you would think. Certainly much more experience. Not having Travis Hunter is down 2 starters if you're Colorado, Phil. So, and look, Oregon is busting out the new heat-activated, color-changing Nike Football Vapor Edge KF Dunk shoes. I mean, how can you beat that? You talk about swagger. Oregon's going to beat Colorado with their own game. What do you think?
Yeah, and this one, Kyle, you could flip over to the screen on this one because this is what I call a red-green game. And the beautiful thing about Phil Steele Plus is green numbers are good numbers, red numbers are bad numbers. Let's take a look at the rushing numbers here. Look at Colorado's rushing numbers. They are averaging 61 yards per game rushing, 2.0 yards per carry. Meanwhile, Oregon is in the green for there. They're averaging 7.2 yards on the ground. And the one thing that Colorado is struggling with is right here, sacks, even with an extremely mobile quarterback and Shadur Sanders, who does a great job evading pass rush. They have allowed 16 sacks this year. Now they got to go into Autzen Stadium, one of the loudest places out there. I think Oregon dominates the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football because look at Colorado's defense against the run. They're giving up 5 yards per carry. Got a couple of red games in there. So Oregon runs the ball well. Colorado can't run the ball well. They get pressure on the quarterback, and you hit it right on the head, Kyle. Not only do they lose their top wide receiver, Travis Hunter, granted he's not leading the team receiving, but he's the biggest threat. They lose their top cornerback in Travis Hunter. So they lose basically their best player on offense, best player on defense. The Ducks are 6-1 against the spread as a home favorite under Dan Lanning. I think they get it done here. And how much juice can Colorado have left in the tank? They've had 3 great emotional games back to back to back, and now they got to do it on the road. I like Oregon minus the 21.
Phil, I know you were locked in 2 a.m. Eastern time, right? 1 o'clock, maybe your time. No, you're in the Eastern time zone.
2:30. Yeah.
You were up watching that thing. Let me tell you, the experience, and this is what happens when a guy who transcends the game of football, as Deion Sanders has, right? Like it's broken contain, as one of my guys, Richard Johnson, with Split Zone Duo and Sports Illustrated says, when something within the sport breaks contain, becomes national, becomes global, that's what's happened here. You got 60 Minutes, you've got all these different entities that are following Deion. It becomes so mainstream that people that are below average college football viewers or not college football viewers at all are interested. So every bar, and yes, Phil, it's a long Saturday of college football. I worked a long night. I know you spend all your day, all your time in your cave with your 12 TVs and everything else, but I am out at a local watering hole, okay? I get there at 11, maybe 11:15. I'm there for the second half, okay? Just before midnight. I watched the entire second half. Every TV has Colorado on. People who would normally not be watching are gazing up. But here's the unfortunate part of it. People are going to look to hate, right? They're going to look to criticize. It's ignorance more than anything. So you've got people who are openly rooting against Deion Sanders, and they don't know anything about the sport. That I hate, but that is sport, right? Like that's what sports gives us. So it kind of is a beautiful microcosm that has been taken to a whole nother level that peels back the onion and says, hey, you know, fans love to hate for whatever reason it is. You're polarizing. It's must-watch television, though. Viewership records for ESPN. And look what Colorado has done now, Phil. They've sold out the rest of their home schedule for the first time in program history. I mean, what Deion has done is just incredible, but different kind of test in Eugene this weekend.
Yeah, what he's done is just absolutely mind-boggling. I've never seen a team make the type of transformation that they have. Basically a brand new team on the field and have this impact right away.
And to make the mistake, too, of getting the ball to start overtime when they had no business of being in that game. And it's not alternate, possession. It's alternate choice. So, all right, Tripp, move us forward.
Well, look, if he returns Travis Hunter to Florida State, where the kid was going to go to school originally, then I'll forgive him and start pulling for him again. But until then, all right, let's move on. Another ranked-on-ranked matchup in the Pac-12 this week. Just a loaded Pac-12 slate. Number 22, UCLA. On the road, taking on 11th ranked Utah, 3:30 kick on Fox. I think the Bruins surprised some people last year with that 42-32 win, but that was at UCLA. This time it's in Rice-Eccles, much different story. Utah's got their defense ranked 17th in total D this year right now. And even though against a freshman who's shown he can be very explosive, Dante Moore, he's still a freshman. Really tough place to play. When I checked this line Tuesday, it was at 4. I think Kyle mentioned maybe Cam Rising could be coming back this week. It's up to 6. Utah by 6. The total's at 51. Who do you like here, Phil?
What do you got for the total on that, Tripp?
51.
Yeah, for the total, I like the under for the reason of if Rising does return this week, which is expected, I don't think they're going to have him running like he did last year. As you don't want to risk getting him injured. And if you're UCLA with Dante Moore, what a talented quarterback he is. But this is Rice-Eccles Stadium. Utah does not lose here. It is an intimidating environment. The student section, is loud the entire game. Do you really let Dante Moore take a lot of chances and risk putting your team in peril? So I think we've got two really good defenses here. UCLA allows 278 yards per game, Utah 271 yards per game. And I can see this be a white knuckle type of game. I like the under. Now, as far as the side goes, you don't beat Utah at home. Utah's playing with revenge. They get Cam Rising back. They've proven to be a really good team. I'm going to lean with Utah, but probably like the under a little bit more.
Okay. Let's another ranked on ranked matchup in the SEC. Should be a really good game. Number 15 Ole Miss on the road taking on number 13 Alabama. We saw Alabama really struggle last week on the road down in South Florida. They're a 7-point favorite this week. The total's 54.5. Phil, I know you're a little more level-headed than me. I don't know if I can forgive Bama that quick for what they did to us last week. Who do you like here?
Yeah, definitely disappointed in what Bama did, but good thing that Jalen Milroe's back at quarterback now. I think they've got the right guy at QB. They're at home, and really Alabama's offensive line has struggled. 5 sacks each of the last 2 games. You need to have that dangerous run threat out of the quarterback position. And if you backed Ole Miss the last 2 weeks, you must have a rabbit's foot in your pocket because this is a team that's been scoring late. You go look at that Tulane game that got a couple of late scores. Then Georgia Tech, it's like a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, after recovering an onside kick, they score a touchdown, get another magical cover. Haven't been blown away with the offense. I think this is Alabama at home, must-win situation. They looked horrible last week, and a lot of folks are going to point to the rain as attributing, but it didn't even rain in the first quarter of that game. It was 3-0 South Florida. So I still like Bama, though, laying the 7. It's a must-win situation, and I just got to think they played by far their best game of the season here, and I think Ole Miss a little fortunate on the scoreboard the last 2 weeks.
I'm worried about UConn playing their best game of the season. It would have to be their best game of the season as they're winless to this point, and they're hosting Duke. The Blue Devils come in as the 18th ranked team in the land. It's their highest national ranking since 1994. They've won their games by an average score of 36-15, Phil, the Blue Devils have. And wouldn't you know it, that margin is what they're favored by. 21 and the hook at UConn, 3:30 on CBS Sports Network. I'm worried about this one for the Blue Devils, Phil, that they can cover a number that large with Notre Dame looming, national TV audience, primetime 7:30 game on ABC on deck next weekend. But they got to take care of the Huskies first, and they might get College Game Day to come to town if they do so.
Mike Elko is remarkable, the job he's done at Duke. You know, you thought David Cutcliffe did a good job there, but Mike Elko has just been a remarkable head coach. And he's going to have his work cut out for him. Those kids are got to be thinking Notre Dame. I mean, you're taking on an 0-3 UConn team on the road. The crowd is not going to be that intense. Next week's game, as you pointed out, they may have game day on hand. There's going to be a lot of look ahead here. And when you look at UConn, granted, they haven't played great this year, but they did stay within 10 of NC State. And if you watch that game, it's 10-7 at the half. I think North Carolina State's a team comparable to Duke. And had they not got blown out by Georgia Tech and lost to FIU like they did last week, the line would be a lot smaller. So I think with a massive look-ahead situation, I like Duke to win the game, probably 10, 14, 17 points, but I'll take the 21 with UConn in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Phil. I am scared for my Blue Devils there. Normally a popular pick for me, but I'm telling you to run away from that one, and I would be more willing to take UConn there. Certainly reluctant for the Blue Devils and the points. I hope it does shape up. We'll get to Notre Dame and Ohio State in a moment, which will be the biggest game in South Bend since the infamous Bush push back in 2005. I still have nightmares over that one as I was trying to get updates on my Nextel cell phone at Six Flags Great America with a girlfriend at the time waiting in line to get on the Batman roller coaster. But we'll swing back to South Bend in a moment. Let's go to East Lansing. It's been a dark time for the Spartans there. Mel Tucker got notice this week that MSU does intend to fire him. He hasn't been the coach anyways now for over a week. Interim is in place. Mark D'Antonio is back as an associate or an advisor, if you will. And I thought that meant a circle the wagons game, Phil, as you put it. I labeled that as an opportunity for them against Washington when they were bullied in Seattle just a year earlier. Nope. I was wrong. I think Washington is playing like the number 1 team in the country, by the way, more so than anyone. However, Michigan State now is at home again, second consecutive week, and they have Maryland to come into town. It was a 7.5-point favorite. 53.5 is the total. Phil, I told you I like the Terps coming into this year. I think they're a team that can threaten to contend, maybe not for the Big Ten title, but be one of those first or second teams left out near the top of the league. I think this is another game where the Spartans just get trounced.
Yeah, and what's been Michigan State's weakness the last couple of years, Kyle?
Oh, their biggest weakness, stopping the pass. Stopping the pass.
And last week, 536 yards. And as you pointed out, I mean, that 41-7 is being kind to Michigan State. I think they got a 99-yard drive at the end of the game to get to 261 yards offense and gave up a school record 713 yards. But their defense, pass defense, has been the key, shredded on a weekly basis. Now they're taking Talia Tagovailoa on. And then when you look at Maryland, coming in the year, I had questions on both the offensive line and the defensive line. As did Coach Loxley. I think the offensive line has sort of answered that a little bit. And the defensive line has played better than expected. So this is a game we're coming into the year. I would have thought Michigan State had the advantage at the line of scrimmage. But I think Maryland's close. The major disadvantage for Michigan State is going to be Talia throwing against that pass defense. I got to like Maryland minus the points on the road in this one.
All right, let's go to an interesting game in Lawrence coming up on Saturday. Another 3:30 kick between BYU and Kansas. This is another line that's moved quite a bit. Kansas opened as an 8-point favorite. Today I've seen it up as high as 10. And that's kind of weird. They're both 3-0 teams, and BYU's coming off that big win in Fayetteville last week over Arkansas. While Kansas nearly lost to Nevada last week, there was a good call by you, Phil, there with Nevada plus 28, I think. That came through with no problem. But Kansas, their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, 42 of 56 through 2 games. He's completing passes at a 75% clip this season. So I think BYU is going to have their hands full with him.
Yeah, and last week, to be honest, I liked Arkansas over BYU. Felt pretty good at times. Arkansas had the jumped out to a quick double-digit lead and had a double-digit lead in the second half. And you think you're on cruise control with a large home crowd. And BYU actually got outgained 424 to 281. But at the end of the game, BYU's got their 7-point win. But I think, Tripp, you hit it right on the head in quarterback play. I know Keaton Slovis has a 6-1 ratio this year. I know he's hitting 61%, but I've been nonplussed with what I've seen out of Keaton Slovis. Even last week in the win against Arkansas, like I said, they only had 281 yards. I have been impressed with Jalen Daniels. You talk about a flat spot last week. They're off a national title game against Illinois. They got their Big 12 opener on deck, and they played like it was a flat spot. They got a touchdown late to get past Nevada by 7. Now they're back at home. I love that Kansas crowd. I mean, Kansas fans have been waiting how long to actually go to a game and cheer. And now they have that reason. So they're going to be excited just for this game. I got to go with Kansas minus the points in this one.
Love it, Phil. Let's stay in the Big 12. Big 12 matchup with Texas Tech traveling to West Virginia. And as your handy-dandy college football magazine will say, again, college football's most comprehensive preview magazine. Still time. It's only week 4. Go to philsteele.com. Go to your local bookstore. Find it. philsteele.com is the easiest way. Again, team pages for every FBS squad. Plenty of other ancillary material to prepare you for each and every week. It is must-have for every college football fan. Your magazine indicates that Texas Tech has won 4 straight in this series. This will be the 13th meeting overall with West Virginia. Not only have they won 4 straight, Phil, but they've also covered in 4 straight. They're favored by 6 and a hook, 55 the total, 330 on ESPN+.
Yeah, and to me, the key to this is location. If you follow Texas Tech, they're extremely tough at home. But under McGuire, they've won just 1 game on the road, and that was against Iowa State, and they won that game by 4 points. So they're not a great team on the road. They lost to Wyoming this year, and this is following a trend for Texas Tech. Texas Tech is actually 4-17 straight up on the road the last 21 games. Meanwhile, West Virginia is much tougher at home. We saw it in the backyard brawl last week where they beat Pitt 17-6. West Virginia's 14-5 straight up at home. It's a long trip for Texas Tech. They already lost at Wyoming. So you got a great home team against a poor road team, and you're getting 6.5 game here with West Virginia. And the key is going to be the line of scrimmage. Now, West Virginia probably going to be without Garrett Green, their quarterback, but Nico Marchiol is a guy who was my number 18 rated quarterback out of high school. He's 6'2". He's got the arm and he's mobile. So he's got everything you want in a quarterback. He's taken the majority of the first string reps this week, which is a big time positive. I think we're going to see them unleash him a little bit. And West Virginia fans have been waiting for him to start since he signed to last year. And I think he has a good game. The run game is going to be important. Take Texas Tech out of their plan, which is the hurry up, fast paced offense, limit their possessions. I think it all bodes well for West Virginia. I like the Mountaineers to pull the upset here.
All right, let's stay in the Big 12. Oklahoma State on the road at Iowa State, 4 o'clock on FS1. Right now, the Cyclones are giving up 4 points. The total's at 37. I don't know at what point we're going to not play the under, but as long as it's somewhere, in double digits, I feel pretty good about taking any game under that involves Iowa State. What do you like here, Phil?
Yeah, good call. I mean, you're talking about an Iowa State team that traditionally is great defense. And this year they lost their quarterback, their top running back, both over the summer. They lost their top receivers during the year. And they've played that way. Last week was one of the easiest unders in the history of civilization, 10-7 against Ohio. And that thing was nothing at the half. And Oklahoma State's offense, let's face it, they're struggling. They came into the season going, we need to decide, is it Alan Bowman? Is it Gunnar Gundy? Is it Garrett Rangel? Who's our quarterback? Well, they still haven't found one. And last week against South Alabama, shutout at the half. They barely scored in the second half. Their offense is really struggling. It's not your typical Mike Gundy offense. So their defense isn't playing bad. I think some turnovers set up the South Alabama last week. South Alabama just beat them down. I find it tough to lay a lot of points. So I'm going to go with you 100% on this one, Tripp. I think your best play is probably to take the under in Iowa State. We've gone with the under the last 2 weeks. We'll go with the under again. Let's go with the under in Iowa State and Oklahoma State.
All right. Sounds good to me. And one other game I wanted to mention before we move to the evening slate. We've got Rice on the road at South Florida. Rice is favored by 2.5. The total's 59. I'm just wondering if we're getting some value here with Rice after what we saw with such a close score between Alabama and South Florida last week. Is there any value with JT Daniels and Rice in this game? Because you have to think if Milroe would have played for Bama and they win by a couple more touchdowns, would this line maybe be closer to 6 or 7 in favor of Rice? What do you think here, Phil?
Yeah, it might be because, you go back and take a look at that Rice game that they had against Houston this year, and Rice led that thing 28-0, and then they needed overtime to win it. But JT Daniels has looked great. He's got an 8-3 ratio this year. Luke McCaffrey is probably the difference at receiver. McCaffrey, of course, the converted quarterback that is now in his second year at the wide receiver position. But I have to be honest with you, I just a few hours ago watched the South Florida-Alabama game. And, prior to the heavy rain, the first quarter was played without heavy rain, and South Florida led that thing 3-0. Byron Brown looks pretty good. This is a dangerous South Florida team, perhaps. I personally am staying away from this one. But, Tripp, if you like Rice in this one, I like your logic, and I can see that.
Phil, it's the battle for the Golden Boot, and this is the earliest these two teams have ever played since Arkansas came to the SEC back in 1992. LSU nearly hit the over themselves against Mississippi State a week ago. If you recall, that was a play that I was on. I think it was 54.5 the total. They won right at that. I think it was 55 the combined score, right? 41-14. Yeah, over Mississippi State. They straight dominated in Stark Vegas. I was sweating that one out, but hey, I needed at least one of my 3 plays I gave. I think that was the only one that hit. Thank you, K-State. I know Phil is also sending his appreciation to the Wildcats. However, LSU returns back home. They got a trip to Oxford on deck, taking on an Arkansas team that is licking their wounds a bit after allowing BYU to come back. Some untimely turnovers for the Razorbacks. Too many penalties. Sam Pittman has been, discussing this week. But hopefully they get Rocket Sanders back. That would aid certainly their running game and ability to open up the passing game this weekend in Baton Rouge. But Phil, I don't know. Arkansas, I think it's the propensity to play LSU close. But I have a feeling I wouldn't be surprised if Jane Daniels and the Tigers run away from the Razorbacks. Maybe not in the same exact fashion they did the Bulldogs last week in Starkville, but I think definitely this is a game that LSU will win, but can they cover the 18?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Kyle. My knee-jerk reaction to this game was after being very disappointed with Arkansas last week and having them lose that game, and having LSU, just as you mentioned, just kill Mississippi State. That wasn't even 41-14's kind to Mississippi State. It wasn't even that close. At the half, it was 310 to 79 yards. I was thinking, oh, LSU's going to kill Arkansas. But then I got myself calmed down and actually looked at the matchup. And you remember last year's game. Arkansas didn't even have KJ Jefferson, and LSU's longest drive of the game. And this is when LSU was playing good football. It wasn't at the start of the year when LSU was struggling. It was at the end of the year when LSU was playing good football. Their longest drive was 40 yards all game. I think they were fortunate just to get past Arkansas by 3. And had KJ Jefferson played, I think Arkansas would have won that game. Now, the last 3 games have all been decided by 3 points. Arkansas won 1, LSU's won 2. It's always a tight game. And I think you hit it right on the head. This game's always played at the end of the year, Thanksgiving weekend. I'm always picking Arkansas because Arkansas, this is a huge game for Arkansas. This is not a huge game for LSU. So you have one where it means a lot more to one team than the other. I think Arkansas and Pittman. Remember, Pittman is a guy who's got a 13-6-1 record as an underdog. They're getting 17.5 points here, and their defense only giving up 257 yards per game. I think they keep it closer than the score. I'm going to go with Arkansas plus the points in this one.
All right. How about the Pac-2 championship on the Palouse this weekend? Just another really good game in the Pac-12. Oregon State on the road at Washington State. The Beavers are favored by 2.5 here, with the total sitting at 58. Cam Ward has looked really good through 3 games, but the competition is about to tick up a notch with the Beavers in town on Saturday.
Yeah, they did beat Wisconsin at home, though. And Wisconsin, I think, is a team similar to Oregon. So this is a dangerous game if you're Oregon State. In fact, Oregon State's a team that plays great at home and not so great on the road. This is probably the toughest road game they have all year up until the final 2, which are now Colorado and Oregon. And you didn't think the Colorado game was going to be tough, but it will be for that one. Now, they can run the football with Damian Martinez. They've got a big offensive line. The rush defense is outstanding. They give up 2 yards per carry. But Washington State's impressed me. It's in the Palouse, where they're always tough. To me, this game's a toss-up, a coin flip. So if I was getting a full 3, I'd lean with Washington State. I think Oregon State's a better team. But I'm just going to watch this one and enjoy the Pac-2, the Pac-12, the Pac-2 championship this year.
I love it, Phil. And rumors about a delegation model as well, potentially with the Mountain West, similar to the Premier League, where we might, bump teams in and out of the Pac-2 to the Mountain West. I don't know. There was a story this week, I think it was Ross Dellinger, that had it. Certainly, hey, you can't blame him, right, for trying to think creatively and outside the box. You got to do that. And just another interesting wrinkle with this one. It's awesome that these two are meeting. I did have one nugget, if I can recall offhand. Let me try to look it up for some of my prep for college football Saturday night, which, by the way, I didn't plug when we talked Colorado and Oregon. That is our college football Saturday night game of the week under the sun, if you will. 3:30 Eastern time. Listen on the Varsity Network app. Chris Hassel from CBS, Mike Golick Jr., formerly of ESPN, of the Gojo, the Golick and Golick podcast. Him and his father, everybody knows Gojo, former Notre Dame star, spending a lot of time in South Bend this week before he goes to Austin. That's our college football Saturday night game of the week. But this particular game with Oregon State and Wazoo. So get this, Phil. I don't know if you were aware of this. 108th meeting all time. Okay. But it's the first time, according to my research, that both of these teams were nationally ranked.
Makes sense.
108th meeting this weekend, and neither of them have been ranked at the same time going up against each other. And as Tripp so eloquently and beautifully laid it out, it is the Pac-2 championship coming up this weekend. All right, I'm wearing the shirt. I wore the shirt for the occasion, Phil. This is my dog of the week. I need a dog. I need somebody to play perfect and lose. This is the team that will play perfect this week. It is Charlotte, the 49ers, Biff Poggi and company, them boys coming off a bad loss, a bad effort this past weekend where Poggi took accountability. He said, look, my teams are not going to play like this. That guy's a character with all the personality in the world, and he's going to go into Gainesville and catch Florida in a spot where they're going to have an emotional letdown, coming off an emotional win at home over Tennessee the week prior. I don't expect the Billy Napier-led squad and Florida to be able to cover the 27.5 against Charlotte. Gators are in the rankings for the first time in a calendar year. They're looking to win 6 straight games. I think it was 3 straight games for the first time in a couple of seasons. It's been a while for them. This game's going to start at 7:00 on ESPN Plus. Again, Florida favorite is 27.5. 50 is the total. Phil, questions at quarterback for Charlotte, but my money is on Biff Poggi and the 49ers going into Gainesville and covering the number as a big dog.
Yeah, and Biff is really one of the characters of the sport right now. I love, and coming into the season, he said this team's going to. He's what 60 some years old, and he said I didn't come here to have a rebuilding thing and have it take 3-4 years. So he's expecting to win right away. But I agree with you 100%. You talk about a sandwich situation coming off a massive home win against Tennessee, a game where nobody was giving them really much of a chance, and now you got Kentucky on deck. A massive game if you're looking at SEC and you're just playing Charlotte, a team that's got blown out 2 straight weeks. The only question I have with Charlotte is what you just touched on, Kyle, is the quarterback situation. Because when I run over the team with Coach Poggi, Jalen Jones is a Florida transfer, VHT. Trexler Ivy, a guy that did well last week, was like the 5th string quarterback. In fact, Coach didn't even give me any comments on him. He's too deep down the depth chart. And now he's going to be, if he starts, I'm a little concerned about starting in the swamp, but it's not going to be that hostile of a crowd playing Charlotte, not like it was last week for Tennessee. So it is a massive flat spot. I agree with you. I like Charlotte plus the points in that one.
I mean, Phil, if the 49ers have half the energy that Kyle has, they're not just going to cover. They're going to pull the upset next week.
Can you imagine what would happen to Mr. Napier if that were to happen? I mean, hell, anything could happen. Anything could happen, Phil. And I'm not putting anything past Biff Poggi. I mean, we are underselling it. I don't think you could sell it enough. If you haven't watched his documentaries, I think it's on HBO Max, where he's the head coach of a high school team. He's got the cameras all around him. He was Jim Harbaugh's right-hand man. I mean, I think for the most part, Phil, he still is an unknown commodity because he's coaching at Charlotte, but I think it all began at Media Days when he wasn't asked a single question at AAC Media Days, and he threw it right back in the media's face. Like, he's not afraid to go, blow for blow. He's not afraid to do cookie reviews on social media with his team, bacon, heck, get him anything. He's going to cut the sleeves off. He's going to smoke a stogie walking up and down the practice field. I mean, anything goes with this dude. He's got all the personality and character in the world, and that energy is going to play coming off a loss, playing at Florida, and they're going to catch him at a good spot. Notre Dame is catching Ohio State in a great spot, Phil. This team is the better team this season. You couldn't say as much a year ago with C.J. Stroud at quarterback for Ohio State. Now you got Kyle McCord, who's still trying to find himself for a Buckeyes team that is favored on the road at Notre Dame. Ohio State is 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 as a road favorite. Notre Dame 6-1 outright as a home underdog the last 10 years. This is the 5th straight time both of these teams are meeting as top 5 opponents. Now, Ohio State has had the upper hand here recently, but Notre Dame is the better quarterback in Sam Hartman. 13-0 touchdown interception ratio. They got the nation's leading rusher in Aldrick Estime. They've got the Kelly Green Irish uniforms that are coming back into play under the lights in the shadows of Touchdown Jesus and all the Golden Domers and all of their godfathers and grandmothers, and everyone is just going to be bleeding Irish gold. And man, I tell you what, this is Notre Dame, I think, by 2 touchdowns on Saturday night. What do you think?
Well, last week I liked Ohio State and Western Kentucky to go over the total. It went over the total easily. And what happened was you had a young quarterback that Ohio State needed to give confidence to, playing against an aggressive defense that leaves a lot of receivers open. And we saw Ohio State light it up. 63 points. I think they practically went over the total themselves on offense last week. But when I looked at the matchup, and a lot of times in a big game like this, you put the checklist side by side. The Ohio State's check mark comes at wide receiver. They definitely have the wide receiver advantage here. One of the best receiving sets in the country. Notre Dame's sort of a question mark in that area. However, running backs. With Estime, you've got rate the running backs at least even. Offensive line, I give the edge to Notre Dame. They're the more veteran group. Ohio State's got question marks at both tackle positions. That doesn't bode well on the road. You look at them defensively, I think the two teams are close. Special teams, I give the edge to Notre Dame. Home field edge, you give to Notre Dame. What's that position I'm missing out on? Oh, quarterback, something you talked about, Kyle. Massive edge here to Notre Dame. Sam Hartman is a guy who in the preseason I hyped as my Heisman favorite. And Heisman, he's got a 13-0 ratio, as you talked about. I love the look in his eyes. I love the way he commands the field. And then you got Kyle McCord. Now, McCord just won the starter's job last week, but that was against Western Kentucky at home. Now he's got to go on the road, face the crowd noise of Notre Dame, face a great defense on the road. Notre Dame's going to do what the first two opponents did, Indiana and Youngstown State, run the football, shrink the clock, take Ohio State out of their fast-paced offense that they want to do. And I think the quarterback advantage is huge. Home field advantage is huge. I like Notre Dame in this one, and surprised they're the underdog.
And he looks like Jesus too, Phil, Sam Hartman. I mean, come on. You couldn't ask for a better setting, a better stage. Sam Hartman is the savior for Notre Dame to possibly win their first national championship since the year I was born in 1988. But they've got to win this game. They can go 11-1, but let's not forget who else is on that schedule. USC and Clemson, among others. Notre Dame outscoring opponents 184-47 in 4 games. Ohio State's defense, though, has allowed just 20 points through 3 games, lowest total in 48 years.
Yeah, I like
Sam Hartman. You got to like the under in this one as well, don't you guys?
Yeah, the under I got at 56.
Yeah.
I mean, if Notre Dame wins by 2 scores, as I'm suggesting they may, that would be like a 28-14, 31-17 type game. So we'd be cutting it close. But yeah, I do like the under. I do.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to another game that might be a little bit low scoring. Number 24, Iowa on the road at 7th-ranked Penn State. Penn State minus 14.5 here. The over-under that I mentioned is 40, 7:30 kick time. Now, you got to think, could Iowa do this 2 weeks in a row? Last week, their game went over. If they could do it 2 weeks in a row, we could be sitting here a week from now asking ourselves, is Iowa a good over team this year? Now, that's something I didn't think could happen. And another thing, with 14.5, James Franklin said this week, this is going to be one of those grinded out games. If it's a grinded out game, you might have to like Iowa and the 14.5 points. If this is a game in the fourth quarter, hard to go against that.
Yeah, and for me, I probably would lean that way. I mean, when you look at Penn State, go back to last week's game against Illinois. Turnovers were the key. I thought Illinois played them. If you're watching good plays, bad plays in that game, it was pretty much even. And the first downs were even at 20 apiece. The yards were practically even. But 5 turnovers by Luke Altmaier last week set up Penn State for some scores. Somehow they covered the spread, won the game by 17 points. But they really did not dominate like a 17-point win at Illinois. This is whiteout, so it is going to be a massive crowd, one of the best venues out there for a whiteout situation. Cade McNamara hasn't looked quite like I thought he would so far this year. He's been sort of average at quarterback. I'd like to see him improve, but the offensive line's starting to play better. They have the defense with Phil Parker, and they have the special teams as well. Now, Penn State special teams not bad, but I always give the edge to Iowa there. Defense, I got to give the edge to Iowa with Phil Parker. I think this is going to be a great game, an exciting game, whiteout. The key is going to be turnovers. If Iowa has 2 or more turnovers, then I think Penn State can cover. But if they don't turn the ball over, and punt's not a bad word, then they stay within the number and could even pull the upset. I think it's going to be a great game.
All right, Phil, let's jump over to the ACC. 17th ranked North Carolina on the road at Pitt. The Tar Heels are a 7.5-point favorite in this one. They're going up against the quarterback, Phil Jurkovich. He's been very underwhelming so far this year, kind of high expectations. They haven't met that. He's going against Drake May, who we know is really good and is going to be one of the top draft picks this coming year. You would think just shove all your chips in on UNC, but can Pitt really be this bad? Like, this is a team that we talked about. They could be competing for I think you had them as the 3rd team in the ACC in your preseason magazine. Correct. I mean, what's going on with Pitt? Are you willing to try these guys one more time against North Carolina?
I am, absolutely. I mean, Pitt's at home. North Carolina's 1-7-1 against the spread as an away favorite. The home team has covered the last 4 in this series. And what's going on with Pitt is their quarterback, Phil Jurkovich. Jurkovich, 2 weeks ago, 10 of 32 against Cincinnati. And last week against West Virginia, 8 of 20. Threw a couple of passes that you just don't even make. But There's even question: will Christian Velo step in at the quarterback spot for them this week? So they do have question marks. But Phil Jurkovec is a guy that knows this offense. He's not that bad of a quarterback. I can't think he has that bad of a game for the third straight week. Pitt's got a good defense. And here's the thing with Drake May, which might surprise you. You know, in the last 7 games, Drake May has 10 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions. He doesn't have a tremendous ratio right now. They do have more of a run offense this year. I like the way Hampton's running it, but North Carolina's a team that barely got past App State at home a couple weeks ago. I like Pitt in this one, plus the points in another potential upset. I think you're going to see Pitt be the team I expected them to be coming into the year.
Love it, Phil. All right, we're running out of time, so let's go chasing. We've got to make up for some of our losses earlier in the day. Knock on wood, there'll be very few. Again, this is a loaded week, a lot of action on many games throughout week 4, but there's still some activity to wet our beak and keep the palate smooth and silky throughout the late hours of the evening. And 5th-ranked USC is a 34.5-point favorite. 62 is the total. They're playing at Arizona State, 10:30 on Fox. This is the first of a few late-night games to keep an eye on it. And Phil, Arizona State, woof. I mean, they were shut out for the first time at home. Let's see what the note is. 35 years, I believe. Yes, 35 years. That was the first time they were shut out against Fresno State last week, 29-0. They turned the ball over 8 times. By the way, that was a 50-0 loss to USC the last time they were shut out. We might see the same thing in Tempe. It might be deja vu for the Sun Devils with Caleb Williams and company coming in. Caleb hasn't even played a full game yet. He's played 8 quarters of football in 3 games, 12 touchdowns. No interceptions. He's also ran for another score. This is going to get ugly, but can they cover the 34.5? Is that too large to make a play?
I would lean with USC. And here's a note on Arizona State. Last week, they were missing 4 offensive linemen. They got down to their 4th string quarterback in the game.
They got 7 in that quarterback room, Phil. I saw they have 7 quarterbacks on the roster, too.
Yes. And you know, the 4th string quarterback is Jacob Conover, who's a VHT signee at BYU. That's not horrible. They had 2 other guys. Their 2nd and 3rd string quarterbacks both had starting experience. But when you're down 4 offensive linemen, turn the ball over 8 times, you have no chance to win the game. But I would lean with USC, but it wouldn't be one of my best plays of the weekend.
All right. Well, if you do have a little after dark desperation, as Schassburger mentioned earlier, here's the game I've got my eyes on. Cal at number 8 Washington. And I agree with you, Kyle. I think Washington's playing as good as anybody right now. They're a 21-point favorite over Cal coming into this one. Cal actually found themselves down 17-0 against Idaho last week before they rattled off 31 in a row. Penix for Heisman for Washington. I think that's starting to catch a little traction. But Justin Wilcox as a dog, Phil, I think that's a pretty good combination you like.
Yeah, I love Justin Wilcox as a dog. Take it anytime it happens. Their offense is actually starting to move the ball. And this is not Michigan State. This is not a team in disarray like Michigan State was last week. Michigan State has a quarterback that's struggling. Meanwhile, Ben Finley has looked good at especially you look at a couple of games, over 600 yards against North Texas. I thought they outplayed Auburn, probably should have won that game. The defense is playing well this year. It's just an automatic knee jerk. Anytime that Justin Wilcox is a dog, I got to lean with Cal.
All right, Phil, good stuff. Let's go ahead and summarize now where we're at here. Week 4, games get started on Thursday. The heavy hitters take to the mat on Saturday. You've got massive games in every single window throughout the day. For Week 4 in college football, what are some of your power plays for us to keep an eye on and take into account?
Yeah, the 3 games I'm going to look at, 2 of them we touched on, or one of them we touched on so far, which would be Arkansas plus the big points against LSU. It's just a series that Arkansas takes more serious than does LSU. I actually like Tennessee off a loss. Tennessee, the last 2 times they lost the game, they've blown out their opponent. In fact, Heupel at Tennessee, when he's not a 2-touchdown dog after a loss, is 6-0 against the spread with the average win by 40 points. If you're UTSA, do you even put Frank Harris on the field for this one? Since he couldn't make it last week, you got your American Conference opener on deck. I'm taking Tennessee minus 21 to off a loss to win that one big. And then the other one, a little sneaky one, we're going to look at Indiana. You know, Indiana's defense, believe it or not, is holding opponents to 151 yards per game below their season average. That's number 8 in the country. They need wins. They're taking on an Akron team that has their MAC opener on deck. Tavian Jackson's looking great at the quarterback position. And they're also outstanding as a home favorite, 8-2 against the spread as a double-digit favorite for Tom Allen. So Tom Allen under pressure. I like Indiana minus the 17. So we got a big dog there in Arkansas, a big favorite in Indiana, and a big favorite in Tennessee.
Love it. Yeah. Arkansas plus 18 in Death Valley. Tennessee minus 21.5 on Rocky Top against the Roadrunners. And the Hoosiers 17-point favorites at home against Akron. I'm going with, let's see, I'm feeling good about 2 underdogs. Notre Dame at home, which should be no surprise. 3.5 points underdog. I think the wrong team is favored in that contest. Also, I'm going against the Blue Devils. I think 21.5 is too large with the Irish looming. 21.5 for UConn. Air Force at San Jose State. Phil's not a fan of the pick, but I like the Falcons to cover the 6 on the road at San Jose State. Sick pick, too. Don't ask me why, but Nevada played Kansas tough last week before the Jayhawks pulled away. Nevada is a 17-point underdog at Texas State. Again, I'm feeling a little bit of the Wolfpack juju, a little bit of Wolfpack good vibes here to build off of at least what was a decent first half against Kansas last week. Tripp, do you have a final score prediction for your Florida State Seminoles on the road at Clemson?
Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to jinx my guys, and I don't want to, have everybody out here thinking I'm trying to buy the win. But I do think there's going to be some scoring in that game. I think maybe similar to last year, something like 31-28. But I think it's a coin flip game. I think either team could win. Hopefully it'll be my Noles.
2 programs that have accounted for 13 ACC football championship game appearances and 11 of the last 14 titles. Phil, how does Dabo Swinney bring a kicker out of retirement, though, and Tez Walker can't be eligible at North Carolina? I mean, how do you explain this sport?
Yeah, you can't. You can never explain the NCAA, can you?
No, absolutely not. Phil, it's been great. Plug your stuff. What else can we look for? I know those YouTube tutorials, Phil Steele Plus, that'll be out on Friday, correct?
Yeah, the Phil Steele Plus video comes up every Friday morning. Tomorrow I'm going to have 6 selections, 5 more quick hitters for you, and some FCS plays. So you get 11 to 14 free plays. Check it out tomorrow morning.
Love it. He's on X at Phil Steele 042. I'm at Kyle Schass. The Lock Doctor is at Tripp Hurd. That's it for week 4. We'll be back same time next week. College Sports Now, wherever you podcast. Also the Varsity Network channel on YouTube. Again, interact with us. $99 valued membership of Phil Steele Plus is up for grabs. We'll be giving out a couple of those as we get closer to the end of the season and beyond, looking ahead to 2024. That's it for the Phil Steele Show, week 4 edition. Again, bet smarter, not harder with the Phil Steele Show here on College Sports Now.